Hi, I'm Annabelle.
And I'm Amy, and welcome to Escape Purgatory, a podcast where we rewatch Supernatural and then talk it through in the hopes that we can finally escape this show.
Join us each week and leave comments on upcoming episodes, and together we can escape Supernatural Purgatory.
Hi.
Hey. This week we have Season 2, Episode 16, Roadkill, and it's got an 8.9, sorry, yeah, 8.9 on IMDb. I think is a little high. Some of the philosophical questions that were posed in this got people thinking, and that's probably might have been why it got higher than it deserves, but it wasn't all that.
I think the 8.9 was probably purely down to Trisha Helfer because she's amazing.
This is true. This is also true.
So this episode was written by Ryle Tucker, directed by Charles Beeson. Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like 8.9 is a little high. It does pose some questions, but I don't know if it's just because it's really tropey. Like, I knew where this episode was going, and I probably only watched it once before.
Yeah.
But in the middle of the episode, there was a point where I was like, oh, yeah, got ya. I know where this is going.
I got it as soon as they arrived. And I'll tell you why when we get there. Or like, it maybe not as soon as they arrive, but there's indicators, especially with the recap that they gave.
Yeah, the recaps sometimes are not helpful to the storytelling, I feel.
Yeah. I think had they not put in one part of the recap, the reveal of this episode might have had a bit more of a impact.
Yeah, no, I agree, actually. I think I know which bit you mean, and like, yeah, it's a shame. So, I mean, the recap starts, it's all kind of, they're hunting things. It's a hunting montage, but it's interspersed with them talking about the morality of hunting, the black and white thinking that we've spoken about before, about good and evil, etc.
What I thought was weird is having Bobby talk about like how the demons have a plan for them, and like, or the demons have a plan and they're smack bang in the middle.
Yeah.
When that came up, I was like, oh, is this a plot heavy episode then?
Yeah.
No, not at all.
I feel like Bobby becomes more important at the end of the series. So I wonder if they're just reminding you that he's important through the recap.
Maybe. Yeah. There was a hard turn into last week's episode, and now we've done a hard turn again into this week's episode.
Yeah. I'm trying to think how other seasons play out with their like fun episodes and what's sandwiching them, what's the bread. And I can't really remember, but I feel like they do this a lot where it's like devastating episode, absolute hilarity, devastating episode.
Yes. Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one. Because I think it just, the rest of this episode just gets worse.
Yeah.
I mean, not episode, the rest of the season. I don't really recall if there's any super fun ones left.
No, I think we're into the dark territory now, into the woods, into it. Oh.
I mean, we have, what, 5 episodes left?
I know. I can't believe
Maybe 6. So yeah, that's sort of the recap. It was definitely a strange one. It gave away what was going to happen in this episode, I think.
Yeah, it was a shame.
So it flashes up now, and we see this tight corner with a sign that's got like tipping warning that you should go about 35 miles per hour. Can you imagine? Sorry, this is like a complete side note. So in England, we also use miles, but like the rest of Europe, they use kilometers. So I was just thinking it'd be funny that if in England we use kilometers and we were trying to talk about, we already have difficult with like words.
True.
To have speed limit signs to be different.
Oh, I couldn't cope.
Too much. And so, but the road's all wet and muddy, and clearly this is not a road you want to be driving on in the dark, which is exactly what's going on there in the dark. And we see a car driving. We also then we follow the headlights of the car, so we almost look like we're on the bonnet of the car.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we go into the car and we see a married couple, Molly and David. Mm-hmm. David is looking at a map, saying that he knows where they are. They have the usual kind of back and forth argument of like, well, men can ask for directions now. Like, don't be such a, I don't know what word she uses, but I don't know. I kind of like that she called him out on it.
Yeah.
But his response, I don't think he got that it was sarcasm. Because I feel like his response was like very legit.
Yeah. I mean, I remember being a child and going on like holiday and stuff, and this is the days before sat navs, and or at least when sat navs were really expensive. So my parents didn't have them. And there being those arguments in the car of like, I know where we are. Look, they were here on the map. And then at some point, like, they pull over and like...
Yeah, my family used to drive to sort of inland Europe, almost to Germany. And like every year, it was the same route every year. Every year we'd get lost in this one specific place. So me and my brother would be looking at a map in the back of the car, trying to read French signs, like not really understand, which is kind of where like I think my navigational skills in today. Yeah. Like let me drive in a certain area for a little bit, and I'll know exactly how to get home.
Yeah.
Like different routes to get home. So
I am extremely reliant on my sat nav, like extremely.
So they kind of continue to argue a little bit, and they're sort of giving you a little bit of backstory of who they are. Like they're trying to go on some anniversary trip. He tries to apologize by distracting her while driving. Like, don't do this. Please don't do this. He's like smacking on her neck and like tickling her or whatever. Yeah. It's like, no. You're on a dark, wet road and you don't know where you are. The last thing you want to do is distract the driver, and that's exactly. And then the worst happens. She crashes. Yeah. She runs down an embankment, and she has seemed to survive. I'm surprised because she doesn't have airbags.
Yeah, that's true. That car didn't deploy airbags. I didn't really notice that. Yeah, so she wakes up and obviously the windscreen's cracked and she looks around and David's gone. So she gets out of the car and like starts looking for him, which is fair. Like originally I was like, why are you getting out the car? You should wait for like, try and phone someone or wait for emergency services, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, no, you definitely would, because part of it's shock of having a car crash. You make questionable decisions. I feel. And then, you would want to find your husband. So she goes to look for him, finds a cabin that has a light on, and goes and knocks on it again. Like, I think that's a fair decision. Like, they're out in the middle of nowhere, somewhere they don't know. And she goes in, and I don't know why. Okay, I was traumatized as a child by the Blair Witch Project. Okay, this is going out. I can't remember what year that came out, but I watched it when it came out, and I was way too young to be watching it. And the ending was always scared me, to the point that like seeing people standing with like their face to the wall is like terrifying to me. It's horrifying. That's the worst thing in a horror movie, I think. Oh no. When they turn around, they have a weird face. And that's exactly what happens.
Yes, it is. That is exactly what happens. The thing is, this doesn't really come back. Like, he doesn't have a weird face yet. He has a normal face. Yeah. And then his face transforms. I've had enough of these facial transformations. Thanks very much. Those are the things that creep me out, because usually, like, I don't like it on screen for too long because I don't want to look at it for too long, but I don't want it on screen for too short because it then stays in my memory longer. Yeah. So I'm like, can we find an in-between spot, please? We haven't got there yet in Supernatural.
Maybe I should stop watching scary movies. I love them though.
I like certain ones. I don't mess with ghosts. ghosts are not my thing. Like, I will not watch any of the Paranormal Activities. I will not watch, like, Insidious. So, a little bit of a behind the scenes for you here. Right now, we can see each other over Discord, right? So I can see my picture, and my worst fear is being able to see something come through the door that's behind me. So I try not to look at my video while I'm talking to Amy, because I'm like, oh my god, something's just gonna come out.
No, that's scary for me too, because we're too far away. I couldn't do anything. Just shout a Latin exorcism over the mic. Oh my god.
You're just gonna see that forever now.
I am. I'm never going to look at the video again.
Anyway, so was there a title card in this episode? I don't remember it. If there was,
oh no, there was. So she sees she sees the man. His face changes. Yeah, then there's a title card, but it comes back as her running. So what I thought was really interesting about this episode is, like, normally after the title card, it cuts to Sam and Dean, like, whatever they're doing. We have the kind of Monster of the Week set up, and then it cuts to them. What I really liked about this episode is that we stick with Molly throughout it. So I thought, like, when I was watching, like, the beginning part of this, was, like, it's really interesting to see an episode from, I want to say, like, the victim's point of view. You know, like, the victim of the Monster of the Week. Because this episode is all very her point of view. She's in every shot. There's a little bit, I think, where maybe Dean goes off a couple of times where the camera follows him, but I feel like it's not very long. Like, Trisha Helfer, like, fully was like, if I'm going to be in an episode, like, I'm going to be in the whole episode, actually.
I'm going to have more lines than main characters, thanks very much.
Thanks. And it's fully deserved. Yeah, so I really liked that, because we've talked before about the perception of that other people must have to Sam and Dean when they meet them on these cases, and I thought this was a really interesting way of doing that, because anyway, we'll get to them.
So we come back and she's running from the cabin and sort of runs up into the road. We see a car coming as she's running up the side of the road, and it's like, well, it's clearly the Impala.
You think we can't spot an Impala in the dark? Like, do you know it?
Right, exactly. And then Dean yells, "Holy," which is, I mean, it's a pretty accurate, like, response. And
let the man swear. Sorry. Let him swear, please.
And then he's inches from hitting her, like hitting her legs, and she comes around and starts banging on the window to let her in, because a crazy man is chasing her. Yeah. So they come out of the car, like, they...
Yeah, this was a weird cut for me. I actually made a point of it, because Sam winds down the window and Molly kind of explaining to him what happens. So, like, I had a car accident, there's a man chasing me. And then there's, like, a really sudden cut, and they're suddenly all out of the car. It was an odd editing choice. I don't know, like, there's no transitional point. Like, she's talking to Sam through the window, and then literally, I think it cuts to Dean, and he's already out of the car, and then everyone is. It's like...
Yeah, it was... Especially since she wants to get away, like, you wouldn't... These are clues, basically.
Yeah.
Right. He gets out of the car, and, like, you know, because Dean asks her...
Did he look like he lost a fight with a lawnmower?
How did you know that?
And Sam's like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, what are you saying kind of face was, again, another indicator. So it was this little interaction that I was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I know what's going on. Because Dean is never this harsh to victims, especially one that's actually in distress.
Yeah, if you think about, I think House of the Holy, where he smashes through that window and saves that woman from the creep, and then, like, he goes and checks on her and makes sure she has a phone and someone to go with before he runs off to, like, save the day. There's none of that here. And, like, if you think about it, this is the woman in the middle of the road, like, in distress. Yeah, where is his, like...
compassion.
Yeah. hero complex. Where is it?
Exactly. So they're sort of talking to Molly, and Molly's only interested in finding David. Like, she doesn't want to leave. She wants to go find David. That's like the most important thing. So this is actually where I wrote something's not right.
Yeah, that's good. I was a little bit more. It took me a little bit longer. Yeah, she's very adamant that she's not going to go with them, but she said that she needs to go back to her car, and they agree to take her there. But it's gone. I think they're even like, because she hit a tree, and even that is like not there or doesn't look quite out of place. Really, it's kind of weird. And she's going like, I swear that it was here, etc. Sam and Dean kind of have a little like aside.
Dean, we gotta get out of here. Greeley could show up at any second.
What are you gonna tell her?
The truth?
She's gonna take off running in the other direction.
Obviously, they have kind of had these conversations before with people they've met during hunts as to like, how much should we be telling them? Again, here it feels a little bit out of place because I feel like they're not adamant enough with her that there's like a danger in the woods, right?
No, yeah.
So they are trying to get her to leave, but then I always like to feel like they're pushing enough. Like, if you think about, I'm going back to like the to Night Shifter. You think they would have learned a lesson there with Ronald Resnick, right? As to how we tell people the truth here, because this woman her husband and car have mysteriously disappeared in the woods. So they probably should be telling her that something's up in more concrete terms than kind of dancing around it like they are to get her to leave, if they thought that she was actually in danger. But they're kind of being very like quietly about it, which is quite out of character. I do like the choices in this, because through the whole thing, I think if you don't know like what's going to happen, it does feel very out of place. And I think this is what I was like talking about earlier, as to like how people perceive them, because the episode could be framed like that, as like, well, they do kind of seem very aloof and like straight to the point at times with people that they meet during the hunts as well. Often, like Sam with the like digging up the body thing, like, oh yeah, that is weird. Like I think if you were watching this and you didn't know, you could see it like that. It's like, oh, it's just showing them that they're quite used to this life, so they're quite sort of what's the word?
Detached almost.
Yeah, detached from it. Yeah. So Molly is obviously quite confused about what is going on. And they do kind of manage to convince her to go. I think Dean says that he'll help her go to the police station to report her husband missing. So they all go back and get in the Impala. And she's telling them while they're driving about David, that it's their 5-year anniversary. And saying about like they were arguing because they were like stuck in a car too long.
It's the only time we ever really argue, when we're stuck in the car.
Yeah, I know how that goes.
And she also says to them that the last thing she ever said to him was that she called him a jerk. And I was like, the look that Sam and Dean give each other I thought was pretty good, because that could very well be their last words to each other.
Yep. They're like, oh, we better change the way we talk to each other.
They don't, though. They learn nothing from this.
Not for a long time, that's for sure. And as their conversation keeps continuing, the radio switches on, and it's House of the Rising Sun. Yeah, Molly sort of says something like, this is a song that was playing when we crashed.
Yeah.
But there's also, in the radio, you hear like the word, she's mine. And a man appears in the middle of the road, and instead of braking, Dean accelerates and goes through the ghost.
Yeah.
Molly is rightfully screaming,
yeah.
as we all would. But the car then sort of cuts out all the electrical and engine sort of putters out, and they pull over to the side of the road. This shot of them pulling over, I think, is the closest that they ever get to fully black and white, because there is no colour in that scene. And I love it. I absolutely love that shot. I think it's really, really good.
I think so too. Like, one thing about this episode that I did really, really struggle with was how dark it was. And I know I've said before about about the aesthetic of sort of the first early seasons. But this one was really tough. There are some parts in this episode where they're doing things and I fully cannot tell at all what they are doing. It's way too dark. But yeah, no, I agree. I love this shot of the car. I love that when I'm just going to like gush about the Impala for like 2 seconds. I love when they shoot the car from the road. So like they put the camera like on the floor and like look up at it and you're like, yes. She's a goddess. Like,
or is it he? Calling back to last week.
Oh man! So they all get out of the car, which is the smart thing to do. This is road safety PSA. Do. I did a little theme tune. If you ever do have to pull over at the side of the road because your car is broken down or whatever, if you can, you should get out because often people will still hit your car. But be careful while you're getting out. Try and get out on the side that's not on the road. There we go. That's my road safety PSA. And they go to the trunk and Dean kind of starts getting everything out just really nonchalantly. Yep.
Which again is another indicator that something's not right. Because he wouldn't do that in front of anybody else. Especially like they usually keep their hunting like pretty much unless the person, because they haven't explained what's going on yet to her.
No.
All they've told her is that she needs to get away from this area and they'll get her to see David and see the police.
Yeah.
So her response is absolutely on point. She starts backing away and it's like, you know what? I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
Because literally he pulled up a secret compartment in his trunk with a variety of weapons.
Yeah.
And their car conveniently broke down.
Yeah. She's gone into like full on, I'm in danger mode. Like,
yes.
I mean, she already was. I mean, so this poor woman, okay, just put ourselves in Molly's position for a second. Had a car crash, husband is missing, went back, been chased by a guy in the woods with a weird, like, cut up face, went back, found out the car was missing, that she, mysteriously had disappeared. The 2 guys that picked her up off the side of the road are turning out to be, I don't know, serial killers? Like, she's having a really, really, really bad day.
Yes, an extremely bad day. So I don't think we mentioned that the cabin that she went to was like a hunting cabin. There was like knives and stuff all over the walls too, which is also and like a blood stain on a table thing.
Yes.
So I think seeing that alone after waking up from a car crash is probably is this a legit hunting cabin or is this a human hunting cabin? Is what my thoughts would go to. Especially since it's not established where they are. I'm thinking it's probably like rural Oregon, maybe.
It says it's Highway 99, so wherever that is. No
There's
idea.
A whole bunch. It could be any of them.
I don't understand how roads work. I just told you I'm reliant on my sat nav. What's a road?
And then sort of Sam is very much the compassionate person in this, which I think is really funny coming off of last week.
Yeah.
He's a little bit of a toned down version of like Dean's description of him, but it is only a very without being touchy-feely, it is very much that.
The facial expressions alone, the concern is just, I love it so much because you're right, it's not too far away from you're too precious in this world. Like, it's really not actually. So Dean kind of gets it. Yeah, he's trying to explain, and he says to them says to Molly, it's not a coincidence that we found you, which is first of all massive red flag. Why would you say that?
I wrote here they're not making their case any better.
No. And then she says we're out hunting.
We weren't just cruising for chicks when we ran India, sister. We were already out here hunting.
Hunting for what?
Ghosts.
Don't sugarcoat it for her.
Don't sugarcoat it then. We were trying to do a thing and you ruined the thing and we spoke about this. And they kind of go through the whole thing that would normally go through if someone had seen a ghost. So like, you've seen it, you know that it's real. And explain to her who Jonah Greeley was. He was a local farmer who got killed on the highway, and every year he haunts the road, and that's why they are there. They'd heard about this, and they're going to hunt this ghost.
I love the fact that Dean refers to him as Farmer Roadkill.
He said the name of the episode.
He did. That's why I loved it. But other than that, it's kind of super, super insensitive. Like, again, like this Dean and the Dean from last week's episode of like him liking the trickster. It's really not there. Like he likes certain monsters, as it were.
I feel like he has a special. Okay, do you think ghosts? I guess this kind of works. Do you think ghosts like are on Dean's like top 10 kind of like most hated monsters? We said witches are on there, shapeshifters are on there, and then ghosts.
I would even put ghosts up top because of everything that they have probably hunted in their life.
Yeah,
ghosts are more than likely the most common thing that they do.
Yeah.
So I think eventually you would just get frustrated with it. He just ain't got no time for that.
It's true. Yeah, it's almost, the ghost hunting bit is so routine. Yeah. It's almost like an extra, you know those little jobs that you have at work, like little things that you do where you have to do them, but they're kind of irritating. I feel like ghosts are like that for Dean. They're not interesting or fun. They're just really routine.
Exactly. Like, because, I mean, outside of the couple of times where they've had to be sort of somewhat creative with a ghost, it's usually always the same.
Yeah. And there's a lot of research involved in finding ghosts. And I feel like at this point in his life, Dean is not here for that.
No. And I'm guessing he's probably a bit more relieved that Sam's there to sort of do that research part now, versus, because he would have had to have done. I mean, he's obviously capable of doing the research part. We know this, but so I think he's grateful for Sam to be able to help him.
On the flip side of that, then, do you think ghosts are one of Sam's favorite monsters to hunt because they involve so much research and history?
Yeah,
I think so too. I think he would like. I reckon Sam probably doesn't enjoy hunting vampires because it's quite messy and they look like people, and I feel like he wouldn't enjoy that generally. Plus the whole morality thing about them maybe not being so bad sometimes. What else? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to pick one more monster that Sam wouldn't like hunting. I feel like shapeshifters are there as well, but like anything that's quite like physicality wise that you just kind of find and you fight. Whereas I think Dean would enjoy those.
Yeah, so I think witches is probably another one, like, or psychics maybe.
Yeah, too close to home.
Yeah, I think so. Again, because I think of Max in Nightmare. Yeah, like he wasn't all gung ho to like kill him. Yeah, obviously there's the relatable sort of side to that. But I think it is anything that looks human. Yeah,
I think so too.
That's living and breathing and human.
Because I feel like Sam thinks that he's helping ghosts, even though when they're salting and burning them, they're still kind of letting them go. Yeah.
Where the thing that I think they all agree on though is they all hate demons.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
That's probably on the top of Sam's list is demons. He hates. Not hates to hunt, but hates. Yeah. I probably doesn't even love to hunt.
It's true, they're difficult. Okay, so like Molly does eventually kind of believe them because they tell her that this ghost Greeley isn't going to let her leave and that he's punishing someone for what happened to him. Yeah. But Sam says that they're definitely going to help her, but then says, but you've got to help us as well. So she takes them back to the cabin, that hunting cabin, And they're kind of looking around because they're trying to find Greeley's grave because they don't know where he's buried because he was a farmer. He had a lot of land. He could be anywhere. They say that his wife brought him back and like literally there's like 1,000 acres or something, which I don't understand how acres work, but that's massive.
It is massive.
So I really like the line here that Molly says and like Dean responds to her because she says,
So this is really what you guys do. You're like Ghostbusters.
Yeah, minus the jumpsuits. Look, lady, this is a fascinating conversation and all, but this highway's only haunted once a year, and we got till sunup to wrap this thing up, so what do you say we move it along, okay? Great.
and I just immediately thought of the like Hollywood video of them in jumpsuits, but anyway. Dean kind of reminds them all that they only have until dawn to sort this out. So this ghost only appears once a year, only at nighttime, and then once the sun comes up, they don't have a chance to stop it again. I don't quite understand how this works because why are they on a time limit? Because surely if they find, see this is again like where it's kind of like suspicious because surely they could just find Greeley's body and salt and burn it any time of the year, and that would kind of solve the issue. But is there another reason that they're on a time?
Well, so they know that on occasion salting and burning doesn't completely work. Like there'll be a remnant of somebody and they have to, like, I think thinking of Hookman, they found his body but they still had to burn all the silver or melt the silver.
Yeah, so maybe they do have to do it on the night that he was murdered, otherwise it wouldn't, he did like attached to something else or whatever,
just to sort of get verification that he is actually gone. Whereas if they just salt and burn the body and then nothing happened, like they won't know if anything happened for at least another year. And we know that they don't go back.
Yeah, I was going to say that's never stopped them before, like doing something. So they go out into the woods to look for Greeley's house instead, rather than his cabin, like where he lived. They're as they're walking, it's quite dark, and they're all going through like stealthily through the woods. And then suddenly, Molly hears like David's voice in the woods, like "Help me," spooky, and gets grabbed by Greeley. But Dean rocks up and says "whoops," which I thought was quite, it's just quite okay, fine, and shoots the ghost with salt.
This is such a classic Dean move to like appear at the side of the ghost and like shoot him in the face.
Yeah.
I don't know, there's something about it. It was just very pleasing. And so Sam goes to Molly and sort of reassures her, and because she's like, all I want to do is see my husband again, and Sam says, "Oh, you'll see him, I promise." And then Dean interrupts and says, "Hey, follow the creepy brick road," which I thought was a great line.
It's such a great line. I'm definitely using that at some point.
And so they use this next bit of them walking along the creepy brick road to do sort of like, it's like hunting 101.
Yeah.
Because somehow she knew it was rock salt. I don't know how she knew it was rock salt, but she asked, "Oh, so rock salt like gets rid of ghosts?" And sort of Sam gives the spiel of why they use salt.
Yeah.
Which I don't think they've actually. I wonder if this was a bit of like, if they were using this episode as a way to kind of explain some of the lore in Supernatural, because I don't think they've explained as detailed as what he does in this, because he goes into like, in some cultures they figure that salt is a purifier, and that's why we salt the bones, and that's why you throw it over your shoulder. And that stuck out to me because I was like, have they ever really said that about salt so far?
No, I don't think so. They just said that it does stop ghosts. I think this is kind of establishing some lore. Probably because they realised they would have to explain it at some point of why they're using salt and stuff. I mean, it does make sense. They're right in that, you know, a lot of cultures do have kind of folklore surrounding salt. Even my nan, when she spilt salt, used to throw it over her shoulder. It has to be your left shoulder specifically. So I appreciate them kind of explaining that here and kind of filling in some gaps for our ghost knowledge. I think before they'd just kind of gotten like a mishmash of different ideas and hadn't really settled on one. But this is kind of like, no, we're establishing this is exactly why we do this, and this is why we'll continue to do this later on as we show more ghosts, etc.
So I'm wondering if they got like letters from fans saying like,
why so?
Hey, can you? Yeah, why so? Like what?
As they arrive at the house, they like split up, and Dean goes off to look downstairs, and Sam and Molly go upstairs.
Can I just say something before they get to the house? They're like, "Why?" Dean says, "Why can't we come around the corner and it be a nice house?"
I know. I feel like they make a callback to this at some point. I do. But
so, like you said, Sam and Molly go up. They go upstairs, and Dean stays downstairs. It's not a Sam-centered episode, but it's a Molly-centered episode. Yes. But Sam's always with her.
Yeah.
So they find like a bunch of scattered papers everywhere in the an upstairs bedroom. And Molly finds like a scrapbook kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like, it's a love letter in there, and she's like, "Oh, it's beautiful." And then Sam explains what a vengeful spirit is.
Yeah, exactly.
In detail.
Well, spirits like really are like wounded animals. Lost. In so much pain, they lash out.
Why? Why are they here?
Well, there's some part of them that's keeping them here. Like their remains, or unfinished business.
It felt out of place, but maybe not at the time. Like, because now, like, rewatching it, I'm like, yeah, of course I know what a vengeful spirit is. Like, why are you telling me this? But I guess after like, I mean, it's been a long time since In My Time of Dying, which is where we got this kind of concept. Sam expanded on what Tessa was saying.
Yes.
Essentially.
I have a small problem with this. Because In My Time of Dying kind of contradicts Sam's knowledge here. Because Tessa explains to Dean how vengeful spirits are made, and he's kind of surprised. But I don't know if that's just literally like because people were rejecting the afterlife, and Sam doesn't say that here, so maybe it was just that aspect of it that Dean was surprised about. Because what I'm thinking was like, they shouldn't have all of this knowledge because Dean doesn't remember that, but actually they do know that ghosts have unfinished business or have tied to strong emotions. So yeah, it must have been in that episode that he was directly kind of reacting to the fact that people almost chose to be vengeful spirits in a way.
In his eyes.
In his eyes, yes. Because they were, rejecting moving on. But again, he doesn't remember that. I really wish he did. But yeah, I think the point here that Sam makes about them being trapped and caught in the same loop was really interesting. And it's very Sam, this conversation. He's saying like they're not evil people, like something happened to them. Which is nice in this context. But they definitely have met ghosts who were also bad people.
Right. He is tailoring this conversation.
Yes.
Because he also mentions love and hate, which is exactly what happens in this episode. It's very much the two sides of the coin on this one. And of course, after after Sam says they weren't always evil, Dean pops up, and interrupts. And like I wrote here, Dean's black and white is back with like a vengeance.
It really is. Like he says here to Sam that he's like going all J Love Hewitt, which is Jennifer Love Hewitt, because at the same time that Supernatural was on, there was a show called Ghost Whisperer. Have you ever watched that?
I have.
And Ghost Whisperer was about she was able to speak to ghosts, and like the whole episode would be like, you go talk to a ghost and you figure out what their unfinished business is, and then you help them move on, and it's all very nice.
Yes.
Which is just such a reference to me here, but fine.
I mean, it's not the first time that he's called her that. Dean's called Sam that though.
Yeah, Jennifer Love Hewitt.
They're both busty brunettes, obviously.
Clearly. Yeah, so you're right. Like his black and white kind of everything's, evil things are evil, good things are good kind of stuff. I mean, the good things are good, don't really come into it for Dean. But he says, like, I don't like ghosts. Like, I don't like them. I don't make apologies for them. And it's like, what's up with you, man? He's so out of character. Well, he's not, though. It's
for the context of what's going on, absolutely not. But for someone who's coming in, to this episode not knowing, it's like, oh, like what? Why is he being like this? And again, like, this is all from like Molly's point of view.
Yeah.
So this must feel even worse. Like, you're with these two guys. One guy's being like really nice to you, but the other guy's being really aloof and like,
yeah, standoffish. You could read it as an audience member that he's just really focused on their hunt and she's kind of getting in his way of that, because we have seen that previously where people are getting in the way of the hunt. Dean often becomes very irritated at them. There is, on some level, I think both Sam and Dean think this, is that they don't really understand why the general public don't have a better knowledge of the supernatural. Like, there must be some level where it's like, well, you have all the same resources that we have. Like, you have the internet, you have, like, access to the books, everything else that we have. So why have you guys not made the connection and can make our lives easier by also believing in supernatural stuff? So I think Sam's better at dealing with that irritation.
Don't they say in the recap, like, we've seen things that people would never believe?
Yeah.
So I think it's also a little bit of that. When you think like paranormal investigator, you think ghost facers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's who you think. Like, people who have never actually seen a ghost and don't actually know how to deal with it. Just that, so everybody's a skeptic, right?
Yeah, and you're constantly having to explain yourself to people. Like, the most common thing that they're often confronted with, and they explain this stuff to people, is like, you're crazy, until they're shown proof themselves. Like, it must be really, really frustrating to have actual hard evidence, like physical evidence for something, and then just like people being like, no, I don't believe you. Definitely don't want to equate this to anything going on in the real world at the moment.
Yeah. Oh man, I hope we have like a epidemiologist who listens to this.
Yeah.
Because they'll be like, you're equating me to Sam and Dean.
Yeah, you are. Scientists, the real hunters of our world. Hard evidence, guys. Anyway.
Oh, that is too funny.
I'm not getting into that.
Yeah, can you imagine Dr. Fauci, like...
Do you think Dr. Fauci is a Sam girl or a Dean girl?
Oh, he is a Dean girl, for sure.
I use this term, obviously, in the most gender-neutral way possible.
Actually, no, I think he's a Sam girl.
I think so too. I think so.
The research might, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, hilarious. So Dean's now in the room, and he notices something like a cabinet is blocking, sort of like a locked door, or like locked from the inside. And he kicks it down, as he does. He doesn't do it on the first try, though. He does it on the second. And he says it smells like an old woman in here. Yeah. And then they turn the corner, and there's a mummified body.
Yep.
And then he says, that explains it. Like, what is going on with Dean? Come on. Like, his one-liners this episode are so callous.
Yeah, they're really off the ball. Like,
yeah, like okay, as bad as these are, I prefer these callous at the expense of dead people jokes rather than his like weird sex cringe jokes.
Absolutely, I prefer these. Yeah, I agree with you.
Like, if I had to choose a Dean, this Dean is the one that I would prefer.
I prefer the tone deaf, like Dean, like read the room Dean. Yeah, definitely.
And so Sam wants to put the body to rest.
Yeah.
And Dean's kind of reluctant, like he doesn't want to touch the body. And I was thinking about this.
Mm-hmm.
Every time they've gone into a morgue, Sam is always the one who has to deal with the body. Mm-hmm. So I'm not actually surprised that Dean doesn't want to touch her.
No, me either, because I feel like he's kind of an established germaphobe. It's kind of shown a bit later on. I always remember a scene where he like cleans off a handset on a phone. That definitely happens. Oh. But it's weird because the last episode, Sam was complaining about how disgusting he was, like while they were living in a hotel room, like leaving food out, socks in the sink, and then
Darwinism.
Yeah, the Darwinism. And then, like here, because you're right, he never really like gets down and dirty.
Mm-hmm.
But, not by, I want to say by choice. I mean, obviously Sam doesn't want to like touch the body and like take it down, but he feels like he has to, so will. Like he's like, yeah, it's part of the job. Where I think this is why I always wondered, like, why doesn't Dean wear gloves more? Not just with the fingerprints thing, but he actively doesn't like. But okay, no, right. I'm having a moment here because I'm like, no, but he does always touch the things.
Well, yeah, like it is bizarre because, like you said, he always touches the things he shouldn't touch, like the goop, the hair, the grossness. But like, so he touches the things that don't look human.
Ah, okay, yeah, good point.
Right?
Yeah.
Like he might touch a body part, like a hand. But then in the episode before last, I've already forgotten. Born Under a Bad Sign.
Yeah.
He touches that body.
It's very like almost, I don't know.
It's clinical. That's what it is.
Yeah.
He's looking for clues, whereas this, he doesn't have to touch it, so he doesn't want to.
I think that's okay. Yeah, I think we've solved this. So if he's looking for clues and stuff, it's fine. But if Sam can do it, or he doesn't have to, he won't.
Yeah,
I think that's it. Because you're right. Like definitely, when they go to a morgue, he doesn't ever like. He always makes Sam do the like investigative work because he's there. That's really interesting. Exactly. Yeah, so he does help. Eventually, doesn't look happy about it. I think he makes a face as they're kind of taking his body down. This woman is Greeley's wife.
Yeah.
So they bury her in front of the house. I appreciate Sam for this. I think it's interesting. Like again, like it really speaks to their characters at this point. Sam is quite compassionate, where I think Dean views death in a different way to Sam. You know, Sam's very like respectful about this woman, like he wants to bury her, etc. Because, but I do think that Dean at this point is like, well, what's the point? She's dead, kind of thing.
And I think this plays back into sort of like the revelations of Houses of the Holy, where we find out that Sam prays every day. Yes. So he's actually like, he's conscious of spirituality. Yeah, I guess would be it. Which is such a strange concept in this show because they literally see spirits. Yeah. So why wouldn't you be? But I guess, you know, how many good spirits have they encountered? Like Mary and the girl in The Usual Suspects.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, not a lot. Also, I think like getting meta with it, I guess, is Dean's been hunting longer than Sam. Like Sam's fairly like newish to it now, coming back. I feel like you have to become detached from death in a way because they kill so many things that look human. Like, you know, think about the trickster in the last episode. They straight up just murdered a guy and left him there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it's almost like a defense mechanism. But I think Sam has that. But when he can, he tries to be respectful. I don't know.
Definitely.
Anyway. So they bury this lady and so Molly really this is a good conversation. So
yes,
Molly kind of asks them like what happens to the ghosts that they hunt, and they both say like don't know.
What happens to it?
Lady, that answer is way beyond our pay grade.
You hunt these things, but you don't know what happens to them?
Well, they never come back. That's all that matters.
After they let go of whatever's keeping them here, they just go. I hope someplace better, but we don't know.
I like the way that Dean puts this. He says that's way above our pay grade.
Yeah.
And I just think, like, well, you do get a promotion at some point.
That's great. That's great.
Like, she makes the point of, like, well, you hunt them, but you don't know what happens to them afterwards.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's true of all hunters. Like, if you're hunting animals or if you're hunting spirits or ghosts or whatever, like, you don't know.
Doesn't Dean say something along the lines of, like, well, they're gone and that's all that matters?
Yes. Yeah, he says they don't come back.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much in this conversation. I really enjoyed it. Like Sam says, like, they just go. Like, I hope they go play someplace better. Again, like, speaking to his, like, spirituality that's been mentioned previously, and his optimism. And then she specifically asks what happens to them when you burn their bones, because there is a difference in what they do here. Like, when they do salt and burn a ghost, you see them literally, like, set on fire and look like they're in pain. So it's like, is that different? Like, good point, Molly. Good point. And then Sam says, well, Dad used to say, and I was like, oh, it's like death for ghosts. But the truth is that he doesn't know. And then he says, I guess that's why we hold on to life so hard. And then he looks at Dean. And I was like, why are you looking at him in this poignant moment?
I guess looking at him like, did I go too far?
Maybe. Yeah. Yes, because he's talking about holding on to life so hard. He's like, oh, did I give the game away kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. And he says, like, we're scared of the unknown. And Molly says, like, that she's only really scared of losing David, you know, because they still haven't found her husband the whole time. Like, I would also be concerned. I think it's interesting that they are admitting that they don't know what happens to ghosts.
So do you think this, you know, if we weren't in the show, like if we could see in between, like, episodes,
yeah,
do you think this would be the sort of a turning point for Sam to, like, actually start looking into what happened to ghosts after?
I think he probably already kind of is. I feel like Sam probably has a interest in the afterlife because, again, have the yellow-eyed demons interested in him? They know that hell exists. Like,
yes,
you would want to be looking for proof of heaven or at least an alternative to hell, because, hey, that's a terrifying prospect. What if there is only hell? Like,
this is true. Yeah, especially since they only see ghosts burn.
yeah, exactly. So what do they think? They think they're sending them to hell? And, like, Sam thinks that some of these people don't deserve it, you know, that they were good people who became vengeful spirits. So do they deserve to go to hell? Do they deserve to be salted and burned? But they also kind of have no choice in how they get rid of them, because often these ghosts are hurting or killing other people.
Right, exactly. You know, I do think there is a difference between salting and burning.
Yeah.
And helping someone move on. Because I'm thinking of House of the Holy again, because they don't salt and burn him. It's the priest that gives him his last rites, and he, you know, he looks at peace. Whereas all of the other ghosts that they've salted and burned. But do you think that priest deserved it to be at peace?
The thing
he
is,
did inspire people to kill.
We're getting into good place territory here, where it's like, can your karmic points change after the point of death? And it's like, but he lived we're told that he lived a good life and then became a vengeful spirit. Like, can he really be blamed for that? Because he believed he was an angel, like vengeful spirit, you know, vengeful angel. I don't know. It's really tough, isn't it? Because I would say it looked like that priest went to heaven because of the light and everything. I definitely think if they salt and burn them, they're forcibly removing them. So it depends. Okay, right. Again, like, getting on into it. it depends how you view the afterlife in Supernatural, because is it like Neil Gaiman's idea that Kripke was kind of working on, and that ultimately where you go is a choice, even if it's an unconscious choice? Because I feel like some salting and burning kind of doesn't look as bad as others, and you're like wondering, but then if a ghost think that they're bad enough, would they just go to hell anyway, even if they'd lived a good life? I'm getting deep into this, but I think it's interesting for their characters, because Sam doesn't know, assumes maybe they could be sending them to hell. I think Dean definitely thinks they're either going to hell or something like, I guess, the empty, because he doesn't believe in heaven.
Right, and also with what Sam just said of like John told them that it's death for ghosts. Mm-hmm. So in Dean's mind, they may just literally disappear. Yeah. That like there is nothing after that. It's just they no longer exist. Yeah. They don't exist in heaven. They don't exist in hell.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where he's at with that. And I think Sam probably is along the same lines, maybe, especially when it comes to salting and burning. It's interesting to think of their philosophy on it, I think.
There's so much going on in the Hunter universe, like in the Supernatural universe. That it's like, oh yeah,
it's a lot. So they're back in the house, and
I think we should tell her about her husband.
We can't.
Dean, it's cruel letting her pine for him like this. I don't like keeping her in the dark.
It's for her own good.
And then obviously Molly says, like, tell me what, because they're talking really loudly in the same room as her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and since she's the main character of this episode, she heard them.
Exactly, of course.
So before they could really sort of reveal what the secret is, again, they hear House of the Rising Sun, and Dean goes to investigate, and he finds like an old radio that's like power cord is ripped off.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's just playing. And they bring back, I feel like this is the first time they've used the cold spot in this way, because the glass frosts over. In the frost it says she's mine. Yeah. Which is, it's kind of interesting that it was, like I said, using frost, because in The Usual Suspect the ghost turns on hot water to get steam.
Yeah. So they could have just frosted that mirror, just saying, because of the cold spot thing. I know they were again establishing stuff here, because also the steamed mirror thing is such a horror movie trope. Like, you have to use it at some point.
Then we cut back to Molly and Sam, and like, why is she by the window?
I know.
She's only by the window to elicit a jump scare, which is exactly what happens, because it's all very quiet. There's only like this creepy song playing in the background. Jonah Greeley grabs her through the window and pulls her through. Yeah, so they run through the forest to try and find her, and they end up losing her. So they come back to the house to like, the only way that they could save her is by finding his grave. And then they notice Sam notices a tree that's in a picture, or like there was a tree that's not in the picture.
Yeah, I was confused. I had to rewind it a couple of times. I was like, what are you trying to tell me, Sam? So he finds a picture of Greeley and his wife stood outside the cabin, and he's like, there's no tree in this picture, but there is a tree outside the cabin. And then he's like, oh, that's probably a grave marker because it's an old tradition. And I'm like, I don't think it's just like a rural tradition. I'm pretty sure a lot of people do that, actually.
Yeah, I think so too.
So fine. Dean's lying.
You're like a walking encyclopedia of weirdness.
But the thing is, so is Dean.
Yeah, they both have really random knowledge about really stupid stuff, so...
I think of Crossroad Blues, like, they know what this weed is used for.
I can relate to this, actually, because I too am a font of really useless information.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, like just real random stuff. Like, it's really hard to hold a conversation with me sometimes, I feel, because
but you need to be on a trivia team.
Yeah, to be fair, I have done some good quizzes in my time. Like, a really memorable time was we were doing a pub quiz and we won, but our prize was a pitcher of beer. So there's just there's pictures of me just drinking out of this pitcher in victory. Like, yes, I'm good on a quiz. here's another quiz story for you. Like, me and my family went to a quiz at a school. I must have been about 12, and we were doing really badly in this quiz. And then suddenly it was like pop culture and TV shows, and I was like, we have this. We won on that category alone. Like, was the most gave us the most points to win that whole thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
I also have useless knowledge on things, and I think I was in Orlando, and we just happened to be in a pub that was doing a pub quiz, and I was giving the answers to our table, and I was like, no, I'm very certain this is right, but I backed down. Everyone that I was like, no, I'm pretty sure this is right, I was right on, and they'd like the rest of our table just decided to go something else. I was like, I can't have told you.
Conviction. I'll fight a person over a quiz question. I will stand my ground. I will be proved wrong. Usually when that happens to me, I'm wrong, but I will have been fought for that so hard.
And it was like the question in particular that I remember is like the most expensive state to live in. And I was in grad school. What do you think I did when I didn't want to work, when I was procrastinating? I was watching random YouTube videos on useless stuff, so I knew what that answer was. And reading stupid articles because I procrastinate all the time. And that's how you find out useless knowledge.
It's great. Like, I do like just being full of shit.
Conveniently, as things go in Supernatural, Molly has been taken to the cabin where also the tree is. She's like tied and being like cut by the ghost with his finger. They have like a kind of a conversation, and again Molly's bringing up David, and Jonah's like, well, you don't have to worry about him, and she's like, what have you done to him? What have you done to him? Molly's like, well, you don't have to do this kind of conversation, and Jonah responds that all I've got is hurting you. And I was like, ugh, we're back to violence against women.
I know. I guess in this way it's just indicating that they're kind of almost like connected in some way, or they're specifically targeting someone on this night. But yeah, it's still, I appreciate I appreciate Trisha Helfer in this episode because her acting's so good. I was genuinely like worried for her. She's such a good actress. I love her so much. Sorry, go on.
Before anything really bad happens, Dean saves the day by coming in, but this time Jonah's much more powerful. I'm guessing because he's like in his space, maybe?
Possibly.
Because he manages to knock Dean down, and I wrote here, bungee cord.
Yeah.
Because the shotgun is like flown away.
Exactly.
Flung away.
My favourite thing about this scene is like as Dean walks in.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, call me Dean.
It's just wild. Oh, I can't. Yeah. Dean's getting thrown all over the place. Greeley like picks up a knife. Like you said,
like summons
it, like force pulls the knife.
Well, this is obviously like the action part of the episode, so there's a lot of cutting in between Sam digging up the grave of Jonah and the fight between Dean and Jonah.
As Greeley's like got this knife, he kind of gets on top of Dean and is like holding it very close to his face, and he's kind of trying to like push him off, and he shouts to Sam like, hurry up. You like hear him through the thing as Sam's kind of digging up and salting and burning this body. And it's one of those, I feel like they haven't done this in a little while, but I kind of really appreciate it, where it's a just in time salt and burn. Like it's just as Dean's about to get, I don't know, stabbed in the face, Sam manages to light it. The best thing about the just-in-time assault and burns is the pause they always do once they've lit the match or like flipped the lighter before they throw it. It's like,
hurry
up.
You're not in a hurry.
Yeah.
I have to have my pose shot.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just this is the money shot. People want the light in my face. Like, they need to see it just before I casually throw it onto the ground. They do show it a couple of times where they're like fumbling with lighters and stuff. Like sometimes. But most of the time it's so casual.
And you would think that like, so How many Zippos do you think they go through? Or do they go back into the grave to go grab it after the fact?
I mean, who knows? Because Dean just throws his whole lighter onto the fire most times.
Yeah, exactly.
So he just has a stock of, he must just have a stock of them. I can't imagine him digging through to bother getting that out.
I mean, you gotta think how many petrol stations they go through. Like, they must pick them up every time they go. Like, I don't think they have, like, a specific one that they like. But, like, so the specific one he has is called a Zippo, because they're usually pretty reliable.
Mm-hmm.
They're not cheap.
No, but I feel like maybe Dean doesn't always pay for the things he has.
Well, technically, they never do, right? Because they're using false credit cards.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I feel like I can imagine them collecting those as like seeing cool ones and picking them up. Like I reckon he probably has a collection of all different types, but then just is constantly also losing them. So kind of like just sort of has a maybe 3 at a time.
Or like in their like weapon stash, there's like a whole bunch of them like somewhere like tucked in a corner.
The thing is, like, why would they are reliable, and that's why you would have them, and also because they can sustain a flame unlike other lighters, so you can light it and kind of hold it by the edge, whereas like cheap plastic lighters you have to keep your finger down on the button. But also, one of the reasons why you buy those lighters is because they're refillable. So
right,
why?
And you would think with how many motels and hotels they stay at, the amount of matchboxes that they have, and obviously Dean obviously goes to strip clubs, and for some reason they're there too. Yeah. At least from my knowledge of TV, I've never actually been to one, so I don't know if they actually have just matchboxes around. And I feel like after a while, you kind of know how to light those, like, without an issue.
I feel like they're not as reliable, but you can get, like, specifically, like, camping matches that can be protected from water and things. I feel like they would be a better choice here.
Yes.
But fine. The ghost burns, like, he burns quite slowly as well. Like, it's quite sort of, like, on fire. And eventually he burns out and only the knife is left. And then we see them going back to the Impala, because I guess they saved Molly. It didn't show them cutting her down or anything. Dean says as they walk up to the car,
"Oh, baby, it's been a long night."
That's a song reference, right?
I don't think so. I couldn't think of one.
There's a song that's like, it's been a long, hard night, but I don't think it says "Oh, baby" in it. So they have another conversation with Molly, and they tell her that David is actually alive. And that they can go see him now. Yeah. And they arrive to a house, which obviously is not that far. Yeah. Because it's still not, like, Dean had told them that it was only 2 hours of nighttime left before they had time. And it's still morning when they arrive. So I guess David stayed in the area.
Yeah, that's weird.
And so if you were her, wouldn't you be like, wait a minute, we haven't gone far enough?
Yeah, that is weird. Unless they drove for longer than they're showing, but again, it's still nighttime, so they can't have gone far. It's still the same night.
Exactly. But she doesn't recognize the house. But they're like, well, this is where David is. And they look through the window, and she's like, well, that's not David. How could that be David? Because he's older now. And he's like starting his morning, basically. And then a woman approaches, and it's clear that they're married. Yeah. And Molly turns back around and is like, well, what is this? Like, what are you showing me? This isn't David. And who's that woman? They explain to her that she's been dead the whole time.
Yes, yeah.
And that Molly was actually the one that had killed Jonah. And it was revealed it was in February 22nd, 1992. Yes. So it's been 15 years since the accident. So this is where I was asking, who do you think starts this event every year? And I think it's Molly, because it's her anniversary, and it's her who caused Jonah's death. So when she goes through her loop, it triggers him to come back.
Yeah, I think so too. And I also think that because of the music, because that kind of seems to be a trigger for Jonah appearing, and that was playing in the car before he did appear, and then hit him or swerved or whatever. And then later on it's played pretty much before he arrives places. So I think, I think she triggers the event, and then once the kind of music bit of it starts, I think that's when Jonah appears.
What are you saying?
We're saying that there isn't just one spirit haunting Highway 41. There are two. Jonah Greeley and you.
It always happens on this night that a woman runs into the road and she's being chased by a man.
Yeah.
Which is, again, why I was thinking she's the one who triggers it. Because I'm guessing what happens is that beginning part is played over and over again. So she wakes up, looks for David, goes into the cabin, sees Jonah. Jonah chases. She runs into the road and causes an accident. Yeah,
so Sam and Dean would have been the next victims of that ghost appearance because they were the ones that were stopped by her running into the road. Yeah, I think that's then where it got rerouted, essentially. It's because they intervened in that.
Exactly.
So they explain to her, and then it shows this flashback to put out some things. They show some extra bits about them doing some research around the highway, and they kind of show them in the library, and they the newspaper article with both of them dying in that car crash. And then it kind of shows some of the conversations that they had during the episode and reframes it into we should be telling her the truth. It's we should be telling her the truth that she's a ghost, etc. My favourite bit from that is when she first runs into the road, they stop for a second and it's Sam and Dean in the car, and Sam says to him I don't think she knows she's dead. And that's kind of when they decide to take her along for the ride with them and not tell her the truth. There must have been a very short conversation between them about not telling her.
And so as we're sort of seeing the sunrise, it's a really badly masked shot. I was like, what is this? But anyway, whatever. They spent their budget on Jonah's face in this.
They did. Yeah, the sunrise was really dodgy. I noticed that as well.
Molly's sort of asking them questions well, I want to go see him. I want to go talk to him, being David.
Yeah.
And Dean's response is well, you would freak him out.
Yes.
You'd really freak him out. And not just for now, but for life. And I think that it's clear that she is obsessively in love. She's in love with him, and but being a ghost at this point, she's obsessively in love with him.
Yeah.
So
that's what stuck her here.
Yeah.
Because ultimately her loop, although she was running from Jonah and getting hurt by Jonah, ultimately her loop always starts with David and then her looking for him. So I think that's what stuck her there. I did wonder, because there was a bit in the flashback where they were talking about what ties a ghost here. And I think what happened to her was, I think her car crashed, and then I think a branch went through the window, because there's a really perfectly circular hole in the windscreen. So I wonder if she got impaled by a branch. They're saying something ties a person to the place. I wonder if it was the branch that killed her that she was almost tied to, that event, as well as the strong emotion, because that's something you wouldn't be able to find in the forest, or maybe wouldn't exist anymore, maybe would be evidence or something. Yeah, I don't know why. I've watched that bit over and over, and I was I'm trying to figure out, because they're saying something ties her here, and I was trying to think if it was a physical object, the car or the tree. But it could just be her feelings for David.
That's how I read it. Especially with the conversation that Sam had with her, saying the sort of the love and hate thing. So Jonah hated Molly for killing him, but she loves David and wants to find him, and because this is the only time that the Bethel test, or whatever it's called, doesn't really apply, because it is for a purpose. Because she is always asking about David. Everything is always about David.
Yeah.
But it's because that's the thing that's tying her to this situation.
The sexy lamp test is always a better one, I feel, as to whether a woman is being written well in a TV show, which is if you can't, if the scene still works if you just replace a woman with a sexy lamp, then it's not good. But this is fine. This passes the sexy lamp test, because it is all about her, and the plot wouldn't have moved on without her either. So Sam's kind of talking to her about moving on, and saying, you know, ultimately it comes down to the fact that she just has to let go. He says of David and of everything. And then Molly kind of makes the point, like, yeah, but kind of like, go where? Because they don't know that, you know, talking about their previous conversation about the afterlife, that it is kind of moving on into the unknown. So,
you know, it's kind of interesting though. So earlier in the episode, you know, just after this conversation of like, you know, a vengeful spirit and like how Jonah finds a victim, she says, well, I've done nothing wrong. Well, yes, she didn't. It was an accident that had caused his death, Jonah's death. In Jonah's eyes, she did him wrong.
But she does say at the beginning of this, like, oh, she does say, like, I killed Jonah and I killed myself, essentially. So she does acknowledge that. But she didn't remember it, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I guess she comes to a decision. Mm-hmm. She makes her decision and she faces the sunrise and she glows up.
Yeah.
She's engulfed by light.
It's a nice shot of Trisha Helfer. Like, I really like the lighting they did on her, despite the bad sunrise. When they turn it around to look at her face, they've lit her really nicely, and she looks kind of like she's moving on peacefully. It reminded me again very much of shots from Buffy, where like vampires decide to go walk into the sun. Like that imagery. Yes. Okay, fine. Yeah. And again, it shows she kind of goes in a similar way to the priest previously, like in that glowy light. So there definitely is a difference there between salting and burning and them moving on naturally. I want to say naturally.
By choice.
Without intervention. And then this episode wraps up with Sam and Dean kind of going over, you know, Dean finally says, like, I guess she wasn't so bad. Like, he hasn't been, like, a complete dick this whole episode. To her, to Sam, just, like, been in a really bad mood with everything that was going on here. I guess he didn't like having to interact with a ghost. Like, it's just too much for him at this point.
And, you know, that's very on par for Dean at this point. I think, again, of Bloodlust, where he doesn't want to agree with the vampires.
Yeah.
He reluctantly agrees with them. This is very much the same. Like, he doesn't say something like, she's not bad for a ghost, essentially.
Yeah, like, this has been a running theme now with Dean through this season. So obviously we had Bloodlust, where he kind of realises that it's not black and white. We had the episode with the trickster where he's like, oh, I actually kind of like this guy, you know, but I'm still going to kill him. We had this one as well where he's like been kind of hostile through the whole episode, but then kind of realises at the end that she wasn't such a bad person. It's almost like this is leading to some kind of change in morality for Dean. Somehow. Ooh.
What? Character development?
What? Yeah, Dean continues this line with like, do you really think she's going to a better place? And Sam says like, I hope so. And then Dean, like, what was the expression on his face while he said this? Because it was interesting. Because he says, well, I guess we'll never know, not until we take the plunge ourselves.
I know. I was like, what is that?
What is that line?
What is that? Why did you say that?
Why did you say it, Dean? That line's going to come back to haunt you.
And again, look who wrote this frickin' episode.
Ryle Tucker, I know.
Yeah. Her and Sarah Gamble, what are you doing?
What are you doing? The tragedy of this. Sam kind of doesn't respond to that because what you can say to that? And he kind of says, it doesn't really matter, hope's kind of the whole point, which is like, yes, this is a very Sam line, like the optimism, the hope of something better. Like, of course he thinks that. Dean responds, all right, Haley Joel, let's hit the road. And that's the end of the episode. They get in the car and they drive off. Haley Joel is a reference to The Sixth Sense, because of course they had to make a reference to The Sixth Sense at the end of this episode.
If you've never seen it, well, you've now seen it.
Yeah, essentially, you have seen this. You have seen the movie.
Minus a few jump scares. You've seen it.
Oh, it's true. Yeah, so this episode, I did like it. It was kind of predictable. I don't know how predictable it was when I first watched it. I feel like I figured it out then too. I'm always on the lookout for this kind of stuff. My brain can't switch off from like, oh, I think they're really dead, or this isn't really happening. And I don't know if that's years of watching Supernatural or just years of watching genre shows generally, because they do this in Buffy, they do this in like everything. I'm trying to think of any other TV show at the moment and just coming up blank. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, so they'll take this kind of trope and sort of do it differently. So like in, say, that's not a paranormal show, but like a criminal show.
Yeah.
The murderer's been there the whole time. That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it was good choice of casting though, because Trisha Helfer was famous enough at that point, like she'd been in enough TV shows that having her on as a guest star wouldn't be considered, and they gave her a big enough part in the episode that you wouldn't have guessed just from her casting. Like we were saying last week, you know, sometimes you can tell from the casting how important someone's going to be to the plot point, but because they centered the episode around her, you couldn't tell from that. Apparently when they were advertising this episode, they were really weighing heavily on the fact that she'd been in Battlestar Galactica.
Really?
Yeah, because I looked this up actually, because I could have sworn that Battlestar Galactica was later than it was. Battlestar Galactica started in 2003. I know, and I could have I would have said maybe 2010. Like I was way off, and I watched that. Like I love Battlestar Galactica. You know me, I love my sci-fi shows. Also an excellent board game. If you're looking for a really good board game, Battlestar Galactica is extremely solid. You get to airlock your friends. There are traitors. It's amazing.
Nice.
Yeah, she was fairly well known at this point, so I think it was really good to have her on as a guest star. I think if they hadn't cast somebody who was so strong, this episode would be way worse. I think she definitely carries this for sure.
Yeah, you're right. If it was an unknown actress an unknown TV actress, it wouldn't have worked.
No, they needed her for this because it was okay, but it was a bit middle of the road this episode, the writing wise. I feel like it was a bit obvious where it was going. It was a little bit on the nose at some points. So yeah, they needed that acting to bring it up to a good level to watch. Definitely.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say about this episode. Really, it was there, in my opinion. There was a good couple of philosophical questions that were posed to them about like what happens to ghosts after they've been hunted. But because there was no sort of pondering beyond this, like in the episode, it was just like they were going somewhere with it, and then they kind of just stopped. Yeah, it's like they kind of added that in to maybe tie it into the rest of the season a little bit, and to add some of that background lore that maybe people had been asking for or wondering about. But yeah, again, the episode needed it. Some kind of additional questioning. Another thing that I noticed, isn't that house that they used the Tulpa house?
I could not tell you. Maybe.
Like it looks so some reason that I think it's later on in this season. The Hollywood episode.
Yeah.
That comes up. I'm going to look up because I swear that house is this house.
I mean, it could well be. You just do different set decoration on it, right? They must use the same locations over and over again if you find somewhere good. You totally would do it. They definitely, like the staircase in the hospital that they use for like a million different things. Of course you would use it again if you can just like redress it. But yeah, you have a look it up, see if it's the same house. So yeah, I don't think it's maybe worth the 8.9. Did enjoy it, worth a rewatch. But yeah, what's the next episode, Annabelle?
The next episode is Heart.
Oh, I know this episode.
Don't read the description on IMDb. It literally just gave it all away. But we have Sarah Gamble and Kim Manners coming back for this one.
Yes, we do. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that one. I remember that episode very well.
They're definitely playing on this black and white look at monsters. So, yeah, that was this week's episode. We don't have anything else to say about it. So, thank you again for our art by the Pixel Agora. We also have, we're wherever on social media, Instagram, Tumblr, YouTube. Come, start a conversation with us. We'll be happy to talk to you about the season and where it's going. And, don't be afraid to correct us on things that we might have said or, what have you. We are interested to know. So we're usually Escaping Purgatory or Escaping Pod and all of these places. We look forward to talking to you.
Yeah, that's right. Please come join us in Purgatory. Because this week, well, we got run off the road. Like, we got picked up, the car broke back down. There was a ghost involved, not sure how. But hopefully next week we can find our way out. Bye.
Bye.